We are ready. So I will call to order the regular meeting of the West Basin Engineering and Operations Committee and a special meeting of the Board of Directors. And Mr. General Manager, can we see if we have a quorum?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Director Tommy Favai.
Here.
Chairman Desi Alvarez.
Here,
Director Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director Don Deere.
Here.
Director Scott Houston. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
okay. Do we have any public comment?
Mr. Chairman, we have not received any requests for public comment prior to this meeting, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If there's any member of the public that would like to speak under public comment, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand or raising your hand here in the room. And Mr. Chairman, I do not see any requests for public comment.
Done. Do we have any presentations?
Staff has no presentations today.
We will go on to the action calendar. First item is item 5A, consideration of a final invoice reconciliation and contract amendment request for Beulah operations and maintenance contract. Mr. General Manager, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this item begins on packet page 4, and it will be presented by NCAA men's basketball champion alumni from Michigan, Susanna Lee. And I just want to recognize the great overall effort on the part of Michigan. And I know that this presentation is going to be championship-like.
All right, go
Pressure,
blue.
no pressure.
So with that, I'll hand it over.
Okay, well, thank you, EJ.
Go blue.
Good afternoon, directors. This item really served two purposes. Give me an opportunity to go over the summary of final expenditures under the Veolia agreements, but secondly, really to come to request for a minor amendment to allow staff to fully close out the contract with amendments. So as you may recall, agreement W3900 between West Basin and Veolia, previously known as Suez and United Water, before previous acquisitions, have been in place since the inception of West Basin recycle water programs in mid-1990s. The agreements ended at the end of August 2025, as we all know. Under the contract terms, the district reimbursed Veolia for the actual cost of service plus 12% markup. And as discussed briefly during the budget workshop number 2, Veolia submitted a total of 4 invoices between July and September, as outlined in Table 1. And they cover services provided in July and August, demobilization efforts, final catch-up charges before the end of contract. But Veolia also had submitted a separate severance pay invoice related to employees who did not remain on the project through Jacobs. Because that charge was not specifically brought up during the transition effort with their management, staff had requested the legal team to review the contract and see if there's any merit. The legal team had determined that the amount is not compensable as it was not contemplated when the contract was established. So per Table 1, the total submitted amount was about $5 million of charges. Staff approved and paid $1 million of the invoices. And as outlined in the memo, this was above the initial staff estimations of what Veolia invoices would be. There's roughly about $1.3 million just from this order. So now that brings us to the other reason that we are here is really to discuss the December invoice that we have received from Veolia, and that they call this as a final invoice, which totaled to be roughly about $288,000. And these include charges, catch-up charges from subcontractors that came in after the previous final invoice as well as recurrent charges that vendors continue to charge to Veolia. Staff have immediately requested and review all the backup documents along with the invoice to ensure that those are valid charges and there was no duplicate charges from previous invoices. And that of the total invoice amount, $283,475.77 was for services performed within the contract terms, and we confirmed those are completed and was paid for in Veolia. And the remaining $5,221.27 are made up of 11 recurrent charges for laboratory and waste management services. However, those charges were incurred outside of the contract term, so it's between September to November. Should the board approve West Basin to pay for these extra amount, the extra $5,221. The total payment to Veolia expected to be $4,946,566.16, which is about approximately $1.65 million above the staff estimated amounts for Veolia. As staff also indicated during the workshop number 2, based on the review of the fiscal year 25-26 O&M budget and expenditure things that we're spending, staff determined that at this point, there's no adjustment that are needed or warranted at this time, as lower than expected or lower than projected sales in the initial month have resulted in reduced expenditures and also offsetting any deficiency that we are seeing under the current O&M contract. Since the charges included in the final invoice reflect services provided to the district, benefit to the district, West Basin is legally obligated to pay for at least a $283,000 amount. The $5,221.27 though are incurred outside the original contract period. So staff is requesting that the board to authorize the general manager to amend the Veolia contract term to end in November 30th, 2025, which will allow the district to pay those additional costs. With that, I will first read the recommendations and then open for questions. That the board authorize the general manager to retroactively extend the term of contract W2900 with Veolia Water Contract Operation USA, Inc. to November 30th, 2025, which will allow the district to pay for the $5,221.27 additional costs. This concludes my presentations. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Pavey, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Susan, I have a question on the $5,000 amount. Now, you mentioned it's outside of the contract. Is that still Veolia's?
So those, during those
Still owe them?
transitional months, the subcontractor or the vendors continue, they forgot to update who to charge. So those been corrected and we do not see those charges anymore.
Okay.
By the Veolia contract ended August 30th,
Yeah.
and these were reoccurring charges that came up after that date that Veolia paid on our behalf.
Thank you for the clarification.
That's it, Chair.
Okay. Director Deere,
No first.
Director Gray. I just find this one odd. So I'll start with that. Yola had a contract. The contract was adjusted at the end. We paid an extra $341,724. And you guys agreed to all of that. That was for everything to balance everything out. Right? Wrong. The severance invoice was $341,000.
Severance pay, yeah.
So that theoretically ended everything.
That severance invoice, we did not pay.
That's the invoice that has not been paid?
To clarify, the severance invoice was an invoice specifically for severance packages that Veolia offered to their staff
Yeah.
that were either not retained or otherwise chose to move on.
Yes.
And because the contract did not explicitly state anything about West Basin paying severance packages, and there was no discussion ahead of that invoice, the staff felt that we could actually go ahead and reject that. All these other costs that either were incurred during the contract period or on our behalf after, staff did not feel that we had the autonomy to decide whether or not to pay those or not. And that's why the $5,000 is before the board today.
So, but they ended the contract and then we still have, but they still came back and said, give us $5,000.
They came back and said, we've identified 288,000 that have that we feel were owed by the district. And after review of that, we felt, and discussing legal, staff determined that 283 of that was or did occur during the contract period. And Director, you may recall that that contract was not very favorable to West Basin. And so working with legal, we felt that we were obligated to honor those charges. However, because the contract had expired on this $5,000 worth of items, I think it is within our ability, the district's ability, to decline those. However, given the long relationship that this district and this board has had with the contractor, we didn't feel as staff that we should make that decision to go ahead and tell them, no, we're not paying that, because those charges were paid on our behalf in good faith and did continue to allow us to operate our facilities.
So then maybe attachment A to the staff report, all of those charges on attachment A are part of these additional charges.
Part of the final invoice that made up the 288,000.
And
And then of that, there are 11 highlighted items that make up the $5,221.
and everything that's not highlighted is what you denied.
Oh, we validated those are valid.
Wait, so that's the
Charges.
322,000?
So if you could scroll to the bottom, Desiree. I believe we have a
So
total
you
of
table one, I know it's confusing. First includes 4 invoices, right? So that's from July to September. Those are the 4 invoices that were submitted. They call it July, August, and then final invoice. In December, they submitted an additional final invoice. Maybe that was the confusion that we might have. We already paid July invoice, August invoice, and final invoice in table 1. So that makes up the $4.66 million in table 1. Okay, and then table 2 of the $288,000 that mentioned in the body, $283,000 were deemed to be incurred within the contract term. And then $5,221 that is outside the contract term. Those are the recurring charges, the 11 recurring charges that they submitted as part of the $288,000 invoice.
So did we pay them the 283,000?
We have not yet because it's combined into one.
But we are gonna pay them. And you say those are within the contract term.
And I would just add, so all of these charges, and I want to give staff credit. So when you look at that 288,697.04, and Desiree, thank you so much. She kind of zoomed into it at the very bottom. I just want to point out that staff actually reviewed each of these specific line items one by one to determine whether we are legally obligated to pay them. These are all charges that we are legally obligated to, especially after discussing with legal counsel. The $5,221.27, those fall outside the contract term. And so that's why we're here today. And this has been vetted with legal counsel.
So it is confusing. I had this discussion previously. So my then question was, and I asked this of you, Mr. General Manager. So if I go above the first highlighted item that is outside of the contract and go up 4 lines to the $28,000 item, which is the T-22 backwash pipeline leak repair, which needed to be done. Why was that agreed to be paid for and water quality monitoring was not?
Mr. Chairman, this is the level of detail that staff has gone into, and again, to give them credit. You're looking at the posting date
Yeah.
of those charges. And so what they did is in pouring through each single line item was determine when those actual expenses were incurred. And so the ones that they're bringing before you are charges that actually happened outside of the agreement. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Everything else, even though the posting date is what it is, those charges were incurred during the agreement.
So the question came in when they say, oh, by the way, I have another $288,000 coming your way. I say, what do you mean? Because you already told me there's a final invoice that's sent to me in September. And there's another final invoice. And that's when I say, I need to see proof. I need to see backup payment to see if any of those we already paid for during the final invoices and whatnot. And to make sure those services is within the contract terms. And we requested like invoices and I don't know what else, payment, proof of payment, all those information. We have staff review those and make sure that they were paid. So the posting dates are because those subcontractor submitted those invoices to BOE after September. That's why those were not made into the September final invoice.
Chair, I get a.
Go ahead.
Thanks. DJ, you mentioned that the 5,200 and something dollars, are we obligated to pay for that?
Those fell outside of the contract period, so technically it is within the board's prerogative to decline.
Yes.
All right, so if we're not obligated to pay this, then what is the staff's recommendation when it comes to the 5,200 to us?
You know, at this stage, those items were paid on our behalf. While we were in that still transition period at Jacobs, we appreciate the fact that the contractor continued to pay them. And so from our perspective, you know, $5,000 is worth paying it and being done. So our recommendation is to pay as the.
That's staff's recommendation?
So, but
I think I would add just simply for the dollar amount, the $5,221. You can remove the legal aspect of it because nobody would sue anybody for $5,200. The question that you would ask is, were services provided and services received, the benefit of the services? And we did in fact receive those benefits and we received those services. And that's the underlying principle of staff's recommendation.
it did happen after the fact. We went over somewhere in the report said there was $1 million more than what was anticipated, and we agreed to pay all that. So if it's $5,000, you guys think it should be paid. Why are we, my whole point is, why am I dealing with $5,000 on a contract where you've already in the staff report said, well, we had to pay $1 million more than we anticipated we would have to pay?
Director, I can answer that. It's because staff does not have the authority to pay these invoices or these items that occurred outside of the contract period. That contract was expired. That contract was effectively over. And so we as staff do not have the authority to reopen that contract and pay these charges.
We're going through a lot of gymnastics to justify the 5,000. I guess is my point. It's like, this should have just been taken care of.
I can't speak for our finance department or our procurement folks or our legal team as to whether they think it's okay for staff to make those payments, but here today to try to clean all this up and get past this contract and focus solely on the new contract.
I'm not in favor of paying it.
I heard EJ's comments. And since we received services, and then I think we should pay services. I mean, you know, it's $5,200. And if we receive services, I don't see why we can't pay for it. You know, EJ, I have a question. Does the general manager have ability to, you know, instead of bringing this to the board, like the $5,200, do you have the ability to say, okay, you know what? Since we received services and then we're gonna pay these services, do you have the ability to pay for it?
No, you know, unfortunately, because of the size of this contract and the dollar amounts and the specific term, the board has basically set the parameters for what we're able to pay for, the amount we're going to pay for it, and the duration in which we're going to pay for it. And again, the work that you see before you to scrutinize every cost and dollar amount that was presented to staff, they've gone through everything. So what you see here is from legal as far as it's outside the term of the agreement, and that's why we're bringing it before the board.
Chair, I'm supportive of paying for the $5,229.27.
Okay. So do we have to go through a contract agreement and all of amendment and all of that?
Check with legal counsel, so we can just allow her to resolve the.
I would say just pay it, and you have the authority, I think, to spend up to either $25,000 or $50,000 without court application.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that there's an issue there with kind of stacking. So for instance, if you authorize us to enter into an agreement for $25,000 and then I was to use my GM.
So if you were to use it repeatedly, 5,000 plus 5 plus 5, but this is a one-time.
What I would say is that perhaps with the board's action and the minutes of the board, we could work through our procurement and our finance team to just simply make the payment.
Why don't you bring back a consent calendar motion just to authorize somebody to issue the 5,000, not have to go through any agreement modification.
Happy to do that. We'll amend the memo to allow the general manager to simply make. And we'll work with our procurement finance team to ensure that that's done properly. You said that might take a half an hour. We beat that.
I told you, this was not worth. All right, moving on to item 5B, amendment of the agreement for professional engineering services for Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility Solids Handling Improvements Project.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this item begins on packet page 8. And for the presentation, we do have the project manager, Kevin Cullen, our engineer 3, here for the presentation.
Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon, President Deere, members of the committee and board. I'm here today to provide an update on our Edward T. Little Water Recycling Facility Solids Handling Improvements Project, as well as present 2 recommendations for related consultant amendments, one for engineering services in this item and a following item for construction management and inspection services. This first presentation will be for that engineering services request. The solids handling project is a critical project to the district. The solids handling system serves as the backbone to all treatment processes at ECL, helping to dewater and remove waste from the treatment process. The bulk of the solids handling system was installed in 1993 as part of phase 1 construction, with additional capacity added during phase 4. As of today, the project is on schedule and under budget. Here before you is an overview of the main components of the project scope. This includes the replacement of 2 of the 4 conditioning tanks, those from phase 1 construction. These tanks are where lime is added to the sludge for the purpose of conditioning for permit compliance and beneficial reuse. Also included is the replacement of all 4 feed pumps. These are the main contributors of main system inefficiencies and excessive O&M costs. Additionally included is replacement of the cloth wash water pump, diluted acid pumps, air compressors, bomb bay door refurbishment, all new operator workstations and PLCs. One item to note here is the mentioned installation of a truck scale. The project team has encountered some constructability issues with the installation of the footings associated with the scale, prompting us to further revisit the need for the truck scale. Based on contractual agreements with the Jacobs team and the hauling vendor, as well as the anticipated improvements in efficiency from the presses, it has been decided to remove the truck scale from the current scope of work. Staff is currently negotiating a credit with the contractor, and expected savings are between $150,000 and $200,000. Next slide, please. This slide shows all the components in green that will be replaced, refurbished as part of the project. We will effectively be replacing all the hydraulics, instrumentation, safety components, and refurbishing all 280 steel plates. The plates will be recoated in Michigan, and all new filter cloths will be installed. In total, we are about 75 to 80% complete with the refurbishment of the presses. All in all, the aim is to significantly increase the efficiency and reliability of the sludge management system. Next slide, please. In terms of recent construction progress, again, I'm happy to report that the project is on schedule and under budget. The contractual completion date for the contractor to achieve completion is January 13th, 2027, leaving us about 9 months until completion. The February schedule update with the data date of March 1st showed the contractor completing a potential of 45 days early with significant flow, which is a great indicator that the project is on track for timely completion. Here are a few photos highlighting the progress from March. On the left-hand side, you can see the tail end of press number 2. Both tail ends of the presses had significant indentation of pitting from the years of compressing the sludge and the force generated by the hydraulic systems. Both tail ends have been resurfaced and repainted. The photo on the right shows the refurbished plates being reinstalled and leveled on new guide rails. Today, we have received 245 out of the 280 plates, with a final load of 35 plates expected to arrive next week. Additionally, since these photos were taken, Press 1 has been completely outfitted with its new filter cloth. Next slide. Here are a few additional photos highlighting progress in other work areas. On the left-hand side, you can see the contractor working on anchoring the new hydraulic power pack for press number 1. These units used to sit on elevated platforms on top of the presses. Through this project, we have relocated them to the ground floor, providing ease of maintenance and safe working conditions for the operators. The middle photo shows the new diluted acid pumps and associated piping, which will be used for cleaning of the filter cloths. The project team is currently performing hydrostatic testing on the piping. On the right-hand side, you can see some pressure washing take place, as well as the new equipment pads for the filter press feed pumps. There are 4 pumps in total, which are expected to be delivered and installed in June. These pumps and their associated VFDs have significant value, about $1.3 million. These pumps are being manufactured in Germany, and as such, the contractor has provided a notice of potential tariff impact. Staff is continuing to work with legal counsel to defend against any additional costs, which the district should not be responsible for, according to the construction agreement. The critical path of the project currently goes through the procurement, delivery, installation, and commissioning of these pumps. Next slide, please. Here's a recap of the construction status to date. A conditional notice to proceed was issued to the contractor on June 9th, allowing them to submit critical submittals and develop the baseline schedule prior to the full NTP. An emphasis was placed on setting a strong baseline schedule early in the project, which is a learning lesson for myself as a PM, and I think it's positioned the district well from a scheduling perspective. Formal NTP was issued on July 14th with a 548 calendar day duration and forming completion date of January 13th, 2027. In terms of cost, the contractor has invoiced us over $3.5 million to date. Additionally, 1 change order has been executed, resulting in a net $90,000 credit back to the district. The contractor's original contingency of about $1.1 million remains untouched. For RFIs, a total of 90 have been submitted to date, all of which have been processed. A total of 70 have been reviewed directly by Arcadis. Looking forward, we're projecting about 5 per month will need to be reviewed. At the time of presenting this slide, we had 10 months remaining, so a total of 50 is projected for completion. For submittals, A total of 113 have been submitted to date. All these have been processed. A total of 93 submittals and 20 resubmittals have been responded to directly by Arcadis. Looking forward, we're projecting 5 submittals per month and 2 resubmittals per month, for a grand total of 50 additional submittals and 20 resubmittals remaining. Next slide, please. Here's a summary of the pre-procured equipment and their respective POs. There's one from PACE for the temporary dewatering system, one from Universal Filtration for the filter press replacement parts, one from Blue Angel for electrical circuit breakers, one from Arnaz for the 2 welded steel sludge conditioning tanks, and one from its Advanced Systems Company for the odor control system. The one I'd like to highlight is the PO with Arnaz Construction. The welded steel tanks are very delayed and were due to be delivered this past fall. The delays are mostly attributed to slow production from the vendor. However, there were 3 to 4 weeks of weather delays as the tanks are being fabricated outdoors in Fresno, California. Through collaboration between the construction manager and the contractor, we've been able to resequence some of the construction activities and milestones to not impact the project schedule. The communication from this vendor has been poor at best, and the district is taking additional steps to ensure a quality product is received. These will be discussed as part of the next action item on today's agenda. We are closely monitoring the schedule for these tanks as they will begin to impact the schedule if they aren't received before July 1st. We do expect them to receive and be installed in the next 2 to 3 weeks on site, so all things good so far. Next slide, please. Now for the recommended consultant amendment for engineering services during construction. The amendment request is made up of 3 components. You can see broken out in the table there. The first is for attendance of meetings and workshops based on the construction schedule duration. And the second and third are for level of efforts related to RFIs and submittal reviews. Each of these components is based upon assumptions specified in the district's RFP for engineering services, which was solicited back in spring 2023 prior to design and construction. After a detailed design and looking at the long lead time equipment included in the project, coupled with the sequencing of construction activities, the construction schedule was increased from 12 months to 548 calendar days, which is just about 18 months. As of early April, again, a total of 70 RFIs have been reviewed by Arcadis. Looking forward, we think an additional 50 will be needed for a grand total of 120. Similarly, for submittals, 93 have been reviewed to date, 20 resubmittals. With estimates, we're looking at a grand total of 143 submittals and 40 resubmittal reviews required in total by Arcadis. Next slide, please. The resulting amendment request for the additional meeting attendance and additional RFI and submittal responses and reviews totals to $231,200 as shown in the first table. The bulk of this request is coming from these submittal reviews. The reviews of both submittals and RFIs are critical to the success of the project and that the project is constructed as specified by the engineer of record and West Basin. I did also want to highlight the additional efforts taken by West Basin staff to limit this amendment request. These include 3 rounds of review and revisions to the request itself. We've also changed meeting participation from attendance at the weekly construction meetings to as-needed meeting attendance. We've reduced the budget amount for resubmittal reviews from 2 hours each to 1 hour each. We've also coordinated with the CM to ask them to perform as many submittal and RFI reviews as possible when they can and where applicable. The district will also do that. Additionally, we've also requested that the contractor package submittals to be all encompassing rather than broken out as individual components. So if the system is made up of 5 or so different pieces of equipment, we're asking that all of those be included in one, and hopefully this will reduce the total number of submittals. I did also want to note that Arcadis did elect to not bill about $50K in services related to the additional coordination on the welded steel tanks, as well as the potential relocation of the truck bill. Finally, the bottom table summarizes the agreement to date. You can see the original award listed there in the amount of $990,440. That award included a 10% contingency. We did have one amendment during the design phase, which was for changes to the instrumentation and control system, primarily to align with the DCS project. So we're creating a standalone workstation here that can be implemented, easily rolled into the DCS system rather than integrating the system into the current DCS system. Amendment number 2 was a time-only extension, primarily due to the development of the design and the formal board approvals that followed. And then, finally, in the table there, you can see the requested amendment, with the grand totals there. Next slide, please. With that, I'll read the recommendation that the board authorize the general manager to amend professional services agreement W3101 with Arcadis in the amount of $231,200 for a new total not to exceed contract amount of $1,329,484. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Pavay, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Director Deere, do you have any questions? Director Gray, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
In the bid documents, what was the construction timeframe?
548 days for the request for bids,
So 548 working days, calendar days,
calendar day.
18 months?
Correct.
At the time it was awarded was 18 months.
For the contractor, when we awarded the design services agreement back in June 2023, we included in their scope of work, told them to assume a 12-month construction phase, as well as 50 RFIs and I believe it was 50 submittals as well.
So maybe if at the time we awarded the contract, we would come back and say that the engineer would have to provide services for 18 months instead of 12 months, we would avoid all of this.
Yes, Director, that's true. We could have brought this before the board at that time and then been looking at a change or an amendment value that was based on expectations for what we might spend in the future. Whereas in fact, by waiting until now, we're able to craft an amendment that's actually based on this
Oh,
project
but-
experience.
Yes and no, but the consultant would have, just like they were able to make a proposal on 12 months, made a proposal at that time on 18 months. And then you'd say, okay, you knew it was gonna be 18 months, you had the final documents, etc. So we may not be, we would be here for $250,000.
I agree, we could have addressed this then.
So it just seems like there are some things that if we think ahead, we might be able to prevent having to come back. That's my point. The other thing is you made several references, which is good to hear that the project's under budget. So are we still gonna be under budget when this thing is gonna be completed?
Correct. Yeah, with these amendment requests before you and the recommendations, we are not changing the total authorized budget for the project.
And you don't anticipate any more change order requests?
Now, let me just boost the certainty of that statement a little bit. As of right now, having talked with staff about this project quite a bit, we don't anticipate any significant changes that will eat into that contingency. That's the most significant portion of the remaining balance for the contractor. However, I don't want to give an absolute guarantee that there's not something we don't know today that could come back. But Kevin has been pretty confident in not only the performance of this contractor, but the entire team, that we know as much as we can know about this project.
That I keep hearing it's under budget.
I think we're all confident we're going to remain under budget, but how much is really the uncertainty. Because we still may need to eat into some of our contingency. But as Kevin's pointed out, we've got a significant amount of contingency that has so far been untouched. And through two change orders, we're looking at actually reducing the contract amount for the contractor to the tune of potentially, what was it, 290,000 total?
Yeah, we've had one to date, that was 90,000, and then we're anticipating another one for the truck scale. There is some positive change orders that'll offset some of that amount, but the second change order will be another net negative change order.
This is just a comment for moving forward. and I guess I didn't pay attention when, we awarded the contract for the design service. Most of the time, in my experience and when I've done this, design services were design services. And then, yes, we knew we had to have the design engineer for construction services in order for them to be able to review the RFIs, et cetera, that the CM would be doing. But it was always practical to then come back at the time of award of the construction contracts with an additional amendment to the design contract at that time for design services, construction design services, or construction engineering services, whatever you want to call it, construction engineering support services. Because they would have, everybody would have a much better idea of what that's gonna require. So I think that as we move forward, you might want to think about doing it that way instead of negotiating an engineering contract, the design contract, include the engineering, construction support services, and then the two don't always line up.
That's great input, Director. We'll definitely give that consideration and look to incorporate it.
So we'll move this item forward. Which then brings us to our last item. Five C, amendment of the construction management services for Ritchie Little recycling solids waste handling project. So go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, before Kevin starts, if I could, directors, just point out that obviously there's a lot of the same exact content in this memo as well as the presentation. And while Kevin doesn't intend to go through all of that, I just want to be clear that we've included it just for posterity's sake. So if the day comes when somebody needs to go back and refer to this specific board item without looking at the one we just covered, all of the information is there in one package. So I don't want you to think we're just being redundant for redundancy's sake.
No, I get it.
Sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll save some time. We can jump to page 37 of the packet. Good afternoon again, directors. As mentioned, this item is also related to the Salt Handling Improvements Project and is a recommendation for an amendment for construction management and inspection services. As previously mentioned, our welded steel tanks are part of those pre-procured items for the project. The delivery of these tanks are significantly delayed. However, the delay has not yet impacted the project schedule. The vendor has been really challenging to work with and has poorly communicated the inspection status and its procedures. Nonetheless, the tanks are progressing and the photos shown here last Monday. Tank 1 is fully fabricated and surface prepped. And as of today, tank 2 is also fully fabricated and surface prepped. And coating is slated to start tomorrow. Next slide. I'll start with a quick summary of the agreement with ACAM Consulting Engineers, our construction management firm. ACAM was awarded an agreement for construction management services in May of 2024 in the amount of $688,168,000 with a 10% contingency. To date, that contingency remains untouched. For the recommended amendment request, similar to Arcade, it's also made up of three components. The first is an additional team effort by the CM team that was undertaken during the construction phase, conditional notice to proceed period, and the start of construction. There was a much higher level of effort performed by the CM team to process critical submittals, such as the baseline schedule and the long lead equipment. Additionally, they also provided detailed correspondence with the contractor, particularly around the topic of tariffs to ensure compliance with the contract documents. The second component is for materials testing services. This scope is typically with the CM. However, the contract documents included this as the contractor scope. The project team has all agreed this should be performed by the CM, and staff is working with the contractor to finalize a credit back to the district for those in-kind services. The $20K line item here is a budgetary estimate for these services. The final component is additional services to ensure that the welded steel tanks are constructed and coated per the specification. The surface preparation and coating systems are nearly just as important as the fabrication itself. Due to lack of information coming out of the vendor, staff is recommending that we augment the inspection services provided by the vendor with an additional inspector from the AKM team to oversee the coding process and provide timely and thorough updates to the district. In total, the recommended amendment for additional services is $87,920. Next slide. With that, I'll read the recommendation. The board authorized the general manager to reallocate funds within the project's approved budget to amend professional services agreement W3137 with AKM in the amount of $87,920 for a new total of 700. Let me start over on the recommendation. I have some different notes here. So more verbiage. The recommendation is that the board authorize the general manager to amend agreement W3137 with AKM for construction management services in the amount of $87,920.00 for a new total not to exceed amount of $844,904.80. That'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Director Tavai, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. You mentioned that the construction management team and then the contractor, are both of them being difficult to work with, or?
No, I think we have a great internal project team. Just this outside vendor has been pretty challenging.
Okay, who's the outside vendor?
They're listed as Arnaud's Construction.
And they're specifically supplying the tanks for this project.
Okay. Then when it comes to the tanks, does the contractor put in like a long lead time in the contract to make sure that, that they're meeting those timelines in it?
Yeah, that was actually, that's a great question. One of the reasons why we chose to pre-procure these tanks is the long fabrication time it takes, as well as the engineering behind them. So the intent of pre-procuring them was to front load the schedule and get them installed quickly. Fortunately, we've been able to resequence things because they are late. They were supposed to be delivered last fall. So we haven't been impacted to date, but we need to get them on site and delivered or installed by June 1st to not impact the schedule.
And you think that that's not gonna affect the timeline on the deadline for the project?
No, it shouldn't. Based on current updates, we're expecting them to be delivered to the site in 3 weeks.
Director
Chair.
Barron,
Of course.
Director Gray?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the CM contract did get awarded at the time of the construction contract. And in the CM contract, they were gonna provide basically resident engineering services for the 18 months. And that included processing RFIs, processing submittals, processing whatever needed to be processed, schedule review, etc. So let's go back over the 3 items that are being requested. The first one is the additional materials testing. That's being done internally, then always through, not always, in this case, through the CM.
Correct.
But sometimes we do it outside of the CM.
Correct. Particularly the way the district handles materials inspection, specialty materials testing and specialty inspection, mainly with our PLA and grant funded projects. Those are done outside of the CM, mainly due to wage classifications.
It's always, I think, a little more practical, again, just to do it outside, has this little dilemma. But why again are we having to do additional materials testing, huh? It's all related to the tanks?
The on-site materials testing that's been done has mainly been compaction testing, like underneath the foundations of the new tanks, underneath the foundations for our temporary dewatering slab. We've also done some concrete cylinder compression testing, just for break test results for when we can load the pads. I think that's the extent of the materials testing that's been done today.
And that's in addition to what they had originally estimated?
The original construction management services agreement did not include any materials testing. When we went out for bid, that scope was actually under the purview of the contractor. And we all agreed that should be done by the CM. District is currently negotiating a credit with the contractor for in-kind services. So we'll get the money off the contractor's agreement and put it on the construction management team.
Read that in the memo. Why would you do that?
Which part? Have the contractor do it as the original scope?
Yeah.
or-
If it was already in the original scope of the contractor,
Um,
why take it out of the contractor contract and then amend the CM contract
the analogy
for the
is
same
slipping,
work?
the analogy is slipping my mind, but it's kind of like the wolf watching the hen, or what's the analogy?
It could be a conflict of interest to a certain extent, and we want
Yeah,
to
but-
ensure.
Yes and no. You already put it in the construction contract and it's, by the way, it's done quite a bit. Because it's testing, you know, you're gonna have a testing lab, the testing lab results are gonna come back, everybody's gonna see them. So, it's just a cleaner effort in this case to leave it alone. Or do it like you do it in a lot of other times where the testing services are outside either the CM and the construction contract and go back directly to the district. We've awarded quite a few that I can recall where we're testing service. So that's one item. Second item then is the shop coding inspection. Who's doing those? Isn't that the testing service?
So that is an additional scope not currently included in the construction management agreement. So
So the CM is providing actual inspectors.
correct, they're gonna send someone to Fresno to oversee the coating, and surface preparation of the welded steel tanks. Offsite, so we have an inspector who is on site every day at the project site, and we'll be supplying an additional inspector for the coating and surface preparation period over the next couple of weeks to make sure that we receive a quality product.
Okay. And we didn't know about that at the time we awarded the contract.
No, our PO with the tank vendor includes provisions for inspection services, but frankly, the communication coming out of them isn't great, and it's really tough to get updates out of them. So I feel much better having an integral member of the project team oversee it and make sure that they get it right the first time.
I would think, Mr. Chairman, that when we make contracts in the future with future company, we remember this
Yeah, that's what, yeah,
this difficulty in communication, as you call it.
This also results into, because we're losing a little bit confidence with the contractor, with them continuously changing the date and then not receiving the necessary updates to the project teams. And we want to make sure that we are seeing a product that meeting the specs. And so we did request AKM to provide additional services that people currently are included in the current contract.
Oh, I like it being proactive.
I haven't heard communication problems mentioned as often as I have tonight, ever before the meetings. It's unusual, I guess.
and then the
Well, I
third
think-
item, which is the additional, services for the CM team effort. Explain that one to me. They were going to provide CM services for 18 months. The CM services include RFI processing, submittal processing, schedule maintenance, change order negotiation, change order processing, etc., right? The full gamut of construction management. So, and we're within schedule, we haven't gone over, it's not like, you know, I budgeted 150 man days and now I have to provide you 160 man days, so I have 10 more days there.
Yeah, well, the
Why do we? convinced me that I should pay for that, that it wasn't part of the basic services. And see, we haven't extended it. And being honest about it, no one ever knows how many RFIs are gonna get generated. No one ever knows how many change orders are gonna happen. No one ever knows how many submittals and everything. So typically you say, I'm gonna be there for 18 months and I'm gonna process all these things. So tell me, convince me why that is extra work.
While the construction phase duration from formal notice to proceed to final completion is 18 months, by way of the conditional notice to proceed, essentially ACAM is providing 19 months and change of services.
Yeah, but they aren't providing 19 months of additional full-time effort there. There's always the pre-construction work that a CM's gonna do. They gotta prepare for the pre-construction meeting. There's all kinds of stuff. We embed all that into the contract.
I would just say that the level of effort that we asked of them during the pre-construction phase to process the baseline schedule and all the critical submittals, as well as help set up the construction trailers, was additional services by the tune of a little bit over a month. Additionally, we got hammered with a pretty good amount of correspondence related to potential tariff impacts, which they went to Great Lakes to defend and coordinate with and help develop proper responses on. So
All part of their job. So, okay,
Director, correct me if I'm wrong, or if I misspeak, Kevin, but I believe we had them involved in the pre-construction phase and very heavily involved in the value engineering that ultimately resulted in the contractors. And I'm not sure if that was scoped initially or not. And so I looked to Kevin to confirm for me whether or not they were scoped to participate at that level in the pre-construction activities, or whether that was all extra work that was not anticipated during the original contract.
yeah, they were scoped, you're correct, to provide services. We did some pretty thorough constructability reviews in the final design stages. However, the time from conditional notice to proceed to formal notice to proceed was not captured in their original agreement. So while we could cover that through the 10% contingency, we're bringing it back before the committee today to formalize the request.
I think that's worth reiterating in case it was lost in the details, is that in both of these items, we are seeking to keep the current contingencies intact in case there are additional things that come up. And in this particular case, while staff is requesting $87,000 for the amendment, there is that $68,000 in contingency that is available but not being used for this purpose. And so I only mention that to say that if we were to exhaust the entirety of the current contingency to absorb this work, then we'd be coming before the board for approximately $15,000 amendment and also have no contingency remaining on this contract. And so the option that staff has employed is to maintain the $68,000 contingency in place, untouched, in case we need it for the remainder of the project, but ask the board to amend the entirety of the $87,000.
Did you have a comment?
Thank you, Eric, for clarifying that, because I was gonna ask about if this goes into the contingency fund and will that affect it? But thank you.
And it can, Director. If it's the board's prerogative, we could always absorb that contingency through this amendment. We'd still need the committee to authorize or recommend, to the board about a $15,000 amendment value. And then if we do need to use any or come back for an amendment later on for other unforeseen issues, we could just come back before the board and have that award, bring that recommendation.
So I don't know, where are you on this in terms of?
No, I agree with the request amendment, because we're not talking about going into the contingency fund and utilizing those funds of the 68,000 part. So I do agree with the the request amendment.
Here's where I'm at. You made a case for the additional the materials testing that would have been done either way. And the sending a inspector of the observe the welding and fabrication. What I don't agree with, and I don't think that staff should ever do it, even if you went ahead and did do it under the contingency, was agree that they're entitled to additional CM services, additional CMT methods. I just don't. If I recall that contract, and I'll have to go back, look at it, they were supposed to provide constructability review. They were supposed to provide all the pre-construction services, and they were supposed to provide full CM services through construction. Now, sometimes you're a consultant, takes a little bit more work, sometimes it takes a little bit less work. That's it. I will not be supporting this because I don't think they're entitled to that. And I don't think that staff, if you were to do it under the contingency and the board never found out about it, that's a good practice. Okay? Any more than the contractor comes back and says, well, I bid this amount of money and I can't quite justify a change order, but I'll tell you, it was a lot more work than it was, and I didn't make the profit. Well, you didn't make your profit, you bought the risk. So they shouldn't have put you in this situation, and you shouldn't have allowed yourselves to be put in this situation.
Need to look
I
at the
won't be
contract.
I won't be supporting the amendment or the of that. Here or when it comes to the board, I will vote no on this. I don't think they're entitled to that. That's part of the work that they signed. And I'll hold back to their contract and I'll read it. I'll say they were supposed to provide constructability review. They were supposed to provide pre-construction services and construction services. So tell me what they're doing. That it took them more effort to do that than they thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah, understood, Director. What we'll do is, we'll review the contract language explicitly and make sure that, as you say, that's exactly what's there, and then we'll, have a discussion with ACAN.
I just wanted to say a comment on, and, I appreciate your due diligence staff for, taking the initiative to, to take this on because, obviously you want to make sure that this contract doesn't fall apart. And I understand that. And I get why staff is taking this position because you want to be proactive and make sure that this contract doesn't go in the hell basket, right? So, and I understand what you mentioned that, it's difficult for the other side not to, coordinate, with West Basin. Shame on them if they're not coordinating with West Basin on timelines or, things like that, right? So I think the job that you've done, I give you a lot of credit for doing that. Because you're going above and beyond and you want to make sure that these contracts are staying at a steady pace and it's going to meet those deadlines. Whatever the other the contractor does, obviously, Eric mentioned the contingency fund. If there's something that comes back where, that they have to pay, whatever, okay, then they're gonna have to pay. But for you to, staff step up like this, I think you guys doing a great job. And, and I think, we should keep on doing things like this, because, obviously, West Basin wants to be known for an agency that you can work with, and, I get it, sometimes contractors could be very, very, sometimes disrespectful, and But, I just want to say that, just great job what you're doing. Keep it up. I mean, if we're moving forward with this amendment, Chair, Alvarez, I understand your position. But I feel when, especially being from construction, you're gonna have good contractors, you're gonna have bad contractors. And if you get into a bad contractor that's not communicating with the staff, then there's a problem. And for you to step up and do that and be proactive and make sure that you're having, testing at these sites where they need to be, good job. Just want to say that, good job.
Thank you for the remarks. If I can just add, I just want to clarify that ACAM as our construction manager is doing a fine job. The challenging communication is with the tank vendor, so I just want to clarify that. We're really happy with ACAM services.
So really happy with them, but we're so happy that we're gonna give them $53,000 they don't deserve. I would, if you're gonna bring this back, bring it back in 2 parts, because I can support paying this extra 20,000 and 15,000. I will not support the 53,000 because that is in their contract already.
Yep, we could do that, Director, and if you'll bear with us, we can also look at adding some more detail about what those specific services were and what their contract required when we bring it back. But we will itemize the recommendation.
Okay. So we'll move on.
And this item will be amended and added to the action calendar for discussion and presentation.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
with 2 options. Okay, information calendar. Close out report for the Pound 33 Second Water Project.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this item begins on packet page 41. And for the presentation, we have Veronica Govea, our engineering supervisor.
Good afternoon, directors. So this is a project that I think that all of us have been like expecting to be completed. It's been always like it's close and yet, not there. But we're happy to report that we have completed the project. And essentially just like to give you an overall view of what the project is. This is a 3.5 mile of brand new pipeline that goes through 2 cities, Torrance and Palos Verdes Estates. And as part of the project, we also installed a 500 gallon pump station. The project overall is gonna deliver 240 acre feet of per year from central water to 7 sites. 6 sites are located in the city of Torrance and the main anchor in Palos Verdes Estates. The project started many years ago, 20 years ago, when the Palos Verdes Golf Club in our service area was expecting to get reserve water for their teams at some point. And unfortunately, we were really far at the time when they started the process of their installation of the curb. And it took us a few years to come in. We installed backbone pipelines and pump stations as part of the Harbor Salvage project. And eventually we came back with a grant, and that grant allowed us the opportunity to move forward with the project. So with that, preempting to the project, if you can please follow me to page 46, and that's where the presentation starts. So this is an overall view of what the project site looks like. The portions with the numbers are basically indicating the locations where the new sites are going to be receiving water. And the right-hand side basically shows the elevation difference between what our original or existing structure several years ago ended up, which was a 300 feet difference in elevation to Palos Verdes Estates. Next slide, please. So again, this is just a comparison of what when we started the project, what we originally anticipated that it was going to last. As you can see, we were going to be done very quickly in certain components. And as a matter of fact, we were going to be doing both pipeline and pump station construction at the same time. And due to various reasons of permitting and approvals and getting things lined up, we end up dividing the two projects into two different bid packages, and we had two contractors going on. Started with a pipeline, and then we proceed with the pump station, and at some point we had both of those going at the same time. One of the components that I want to highlight is that you can see that, again, the timeframes definitely lasted much longer than what we originally had anticipated. But with the construction component, which is the item that refers to construction contracting, that was the bid process that we had to go through for awarding contractors. And on the pump station, it says rejected. When we went out for bid the first time, our bids were double the price that we were expecting. So the recommendation provided was to reject the bids and let's start over. And we're glad that we did that, because essentially we came back to a much lower price and more competition on that second part of the bidding process. So the pipeline started in June 2023, the notice to proceed, and we filed notice of completion on February 2026. And the pump station, the notice to proceed was issued on February 2024, and we filed the notice of completion on March 2026. Next slide, please. This is, and I'm going to go back to the funding provided by each agency and entity, but just wanted to provide, show basically the different partners that were part of the project and that help us in getting this project funded and authorized for construction. Next slide. Team. It's very important in a project, whether it's small or large, but on this one, I wanted to thank everybody in the district that helped. And it's very difficult to go into every single person that worked on the project. However, I wanted to mention that I don't think that there was one single department that didn't work on the project. As you can see, there was a component of every single department that at some point or another participated. And whether people might think like maybe record management was not part of the project. No, actually they were when we needed them to provide some information that was being requested for public purposes, procurement, getting our contracts lined up, the government affairs trying to get us some funding and regulations lined up, public information, again, being out there with the public, providing information to all the residents, answering hotlines, emails, complaints, all sort of things. Operations being constantly on the field to making sure that they were getting familiar with the pipeline, closing valves, opening valves, especially doing the cross connection testing with Palos Verdes government, as well as the testing that was very intense for the pump station. So again, admin, information technology, all of them, engineering, finance, all of those departments were participants of the project. And again, it would be very difficult to go through the whole list of people who actually work on the project, but I'm very thankful to every single member of those departments. And as well as the consultants, as you can see on the right-hand side, there's a table that basically lines up like all the contractors that were participants and vendors that were participant on the project, and in the various different areas that we have to work with. Next slide. The pipeline, as I mentioned, the construction was awarded in March of 2023. The notice of completion, again, issued until February 13 of 2026. And the contract award started with $8.9 million, essentially, for the project, and we had a 10% contingency. As part of the project, again, we have pluses, we have minuses, but our minuses found to be more. And our final contract amount ended up being at $8.6, $8,640,678.26. Submittals, we had an infinite amount of submittals too, and RFIs too. As part of this project, we also have the introduction of participation into project labor agreements. And we can see that there was a success on the project, given the fact that there was a very long project that we had the opportunity to have members from union and trades participating for longer periods of time. And I'm happy to see that the numbers did work very well for us in this particular component. Just to highlight on what at risk means. So at risk is basically all those workers who reside within 10 miles of West Basin's headquarters office and that meet two of the following criteria: being homeless, custodial single parent, receiving public assistance, criminal justice record, unemployed for several years, gross household income below the 50% area of the median income. The local hire consists of, there's 2 tiers for local hire. Tier number 1 is all of those workers that are within our zip codes in our service area. And when we can't get those workers within the service area, we open up for tier number 2, which is moving for beyond those zip codes, but still within the Los Angeles County. So when the contractor cannot find workers within tier 1, they do work with our labor compliance consultant to try to get workers to, but at the same time, they request permission to open up the tier 2, and then we do analyze information and then we open up. So yeah, so there's some process. And then apprentices, again, it's a great opportunity for newcomers and to get familiar with the industry and give that opportunity. So with that in mind, if you can follow me to the next slide. So this is just a summary of the final numbers that were accounted for the project. And again, our project goal was 5%, and we were able to achieve a 5.4% of the overall at-risk participation. I have included the companies and then by occupation on how it was broken down. And then division 1, 2, 3, that represents basically our directors divisions on the West Basin area. Next slide. Similar local participation or project goal was 30%, and we exceeded those goals to 31.5%. And you can see a display of all the participants, the subcontractors, contractors that work on the project. And the next slide, please. And these are the apprentices, very similar. Again, we have a display of all the contractors, subcontractors that work on the project, as well as the excess on the project participation that was reached at 30.6%, and when our project goal was 67%. So this is considered a great success with the union and the PLA project. And if you can please follow me to the next page. So this is just a summary of the pump station construction. Again, we awarded the project November 27, 2023. The notice to proceed was issued on February 3rd, 2024. So we were waiting for permits to be released, so we have to wait a few months there. Our notice of completion was finalized, yes, at the end of March. And our contract award was $2,284,250. We had 10% contingency. We come to the board, I believe last month, to request an additional 3% so we can cover our final change orders. And we're in the process of finalizing that paperwork. So that's why I have an asterisk on the final percent, the changes. And again, our final contract amount is estimated at $2.5 million. And the number submittals and RFIs. Now, moving into the PLA participation, unfortunately on this project, we didn't have as much reach as we need on the pipeline. And one, the contractor was a self-performing contractor. The contractor was performed by Arnas Construction. The pipeline was performed by Blois Construction. And by being a self-performing contractor, that kind of limits the amount of subcontractors that I actually are using because they were basically doing all the work. So, however, they did still work with the trades to make sure they were trying, they will get participation. Several times also our labor compliance team communicated with the union, the trades to try to get more workers because we were not getting that participation. And tier one was basically not moving too much when we were under tier one under local participation. So contractor ask us like, can I open up to tier two? And tier two basically open up a much wide variety of participation. Contractor did again contact union trades to get those participants and also detail to the trust fund allocation. So moving forward to the next slide. So again, here you can see the participation at risk. Unfortunately, we were not able to reach the goal. The next slide. Local participation that was exceeded to 52.5%. The goal was 30%. And the next slide. Again, we were basically halfway on the participation for the apprentices. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are all the permits and services that at some point we had everything open. So there was a lot of things going on. As you can see, the pipeline had a good number of permits on its own, in the pump station as well. Again, and also we were working with two different cities, different inspectors at times. So I guess, yeah, when I look at this project, I feel like this is the one project that I have seen the most permits open at the same time. But I'm just glad that at this point we're basically close with all of them and moving forward into accelerating the completion of the project. Next slide. So when it comes to project costs or budget amount was the estimated cost construction project 16.9 million. And what I done on this slide is identify all those areas as well as the companies that did work on the project and like the associated wording changes. And under easements and permits and utility and services, that just those are expenses that West Basin had anticipated as part of the project. But because naming every single permit and all that, that might be a little bit difficult. I just like bundle up into how much they total. So total, accounting finance is still closing the books because we just closed all the projects, but so the final numbers in regards to payments and all that is still closing. But our estimation is being projected to the 15.6 million. Now, this project, there's a loan and there's obviously an interest that comes along with that. So I included a line item for the interest in there, and then a final total cost being of 15.8 million, which is lower than the original 6.9 million. Next page, please. Funding and financing. So as you might remember, I did mention some of the funding entities that were participant into this project. So this is just a summary of how much each of they provided either on a grant, form, or as part of an agreement, or as part of a loan. And those items that are categorized as a loan have a loan interest over the 20 years has been a total of $218,093. So with a loan payment of $4,118,093. And monies received as of those agreements, we're in the process of getting all those monies in. Prop 84 has already paid us a 1.7 million, and they're in the process of releasing that retention that was associated with the grant. So we should be receiving those soon. And then we have also we're invoicing also PB Golf Club and Cal Water for the monies that they have agreed to pay for the project. In overall, again, the grand total of these fundings became $11,245,537, and yeah, totaling a grand total of $1,820,623 when we include our payroll. So into next page, please, or slide. And these are just some photos of the project itself. The photo on the upper right-hand corner, that was a project that was a photo that I took at nighttime because I wanted to see the light. It was still not paid in the front, but however, it's my favorite picture, so I wanted to kind of include my favorite picture on that one. So yeah, so that's included. And then the rest of the pictures are basically the photos of water being delivered via aircraft to the golf club. And then the other ones are just photos of the exterior of the pump station and interior of the pump station. So with that, that concludes the presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. 35A, you have any questions?
Yeah, I just got comments. I know you're being humble about, including City of Torrance because they are so difficult to work with, right? When it comes to the permitting and, other things, and I heard the stories. But, I think this is a long time coming and, great job to the staff, for progressing forward on this. I know it's, it's not easy, working with a lot of contractors, especially when you split up pump station and pipeline, stuff like that. So it starts to become complicated when you're working with different contractors and so forth. And every contractor has different characters. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to staff for working on this. I know it's been a long time. So,
Director Deere,
I think no comments.
Director Gray,
Thank you. No comments.
okay, again, thank you. This is it. We're wrapping it all up.
Yes.
So but I do have a couple of wrap-up questions. But thank you and I know you put a lot of time and effort in this, Veronica, and all the staff. Thank you very much. In terms of the funding, we have two outstanding funding sources who have not made their payments yet. Is that correct?
I can say that. A lot of those contracts or agreements were dependent largely on notice completion. And so we have supplied them with invoices and we fully expect them to pay within the terms of the invoice.
All right. So we are going to see our $3.2 million.
We believe so.
It's just submitted the invoice to Calwater.
And then on the actual total of everything, you do have a footnote that there's ongoing final change order process. The change order, is that processing or does that mean you're still negotiating a change order?
No, it's the processing.
But the
So
change order is negotiated, you know what the number is.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of all of the companies that you were involved in this, was anybody difficult to work with?
I think everybody, it was challenging. And I didn't have white hair when I started the project.
Oh, every construction job is challenging.
Yeah, I
I've
mean,
never, we all start out as friends and at the end of the job, we're throwing shoes at each other. And then once the job is done and then 6 months later, you see each other and everybody's like, okay, what are you working on now?
I feel like, I mean, there's challenges, there's issues, and yet at times we do not agree to things and we do have our differences. However, I feel like the group at the end of the day, talking like what we need, how do we get there, it's about like finding a solution to a problem because I feel like that's part of the job, right? That we are problem solvers. So we probably, I mean, sometimes we don't like the challenge because it comes very hard and strong, but at the same time, it's like we like to resolve issues, and I think like people get a lot of pride on getting through all those, even, whether it's easier or more difficult, vendor, consultant, contractor. It's getting through this phase. And unfortunately, yeah, so this takes a little bit longer, but getting through all those items, it's very rewarding.
I want to just highlight how much effort that Veronica and Camille have put into
I know that she had.
quarters efforts, so I just want to.
And she's done a very good job and it did get done, notwithstanding Torrance slowing it up. Then we had the slide or whatever that we had to deal with, etc. So, no, very good job.
Yeah, no, when I mentioned Camille is ready to run her own project.
So, no, thank you and glad that it's all done and it's all finished now and we're there. So kudos to you and the team.
You can finally take it.
Glad that you were able to work with all the contractors and that everybody is difficult, but it's just part of that process. So thank you very much. All right. So I have a little bit of time. So we have one more item on the information calendar and that's the update on the quarterly capital improvement program and technical planning program.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this will be presented by Susanna Lee, our manager of engineering. The item begins on packet page 63.
Good afternoon, directors. We can skip to the presentation. Before we go over that, I just want to highlight this per month, for the month of March, we did have a excursion with water quality coming in from Hyperion, if you haven't heard. So that did impact barrier productions and Chevron, no, not Chevron, but just want to highlight that.
So that's what we meant.
I don't know if you mentioned that.
That we mentioned something.
If we did, then I apologize. So go to the next page, please. This is the agenda for here updates on number of projects and some you already heard, solids and then DCS, you're well aware of those projects, but want to bring to the attention of other ones that you may not be as familiarized or we might not have mentioned before. So we'll go over those project highlights and obviously we can go over the barrier production if we want at the end, and then there are other attachments in the end for your review. Next slide, please.
Now, if I
Yeah.
could, just as always, directors, if there's a particular project you really want to hear about and there's updates in the package that are available to read. In the interest of time, if there's anything you'd like us to focus on and skip, take your direction.
And for any one of those, we told the PMs to be sustaining on the report as well, but then we can expand on the reports. Okay, next slide. Just on the look ahead. So these are the number of projects that we're bringing to the board in the coming months. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But with that, I will turn it over to the PM for the project updates. Next page.
Thank you, Susanna. Good afternoon, members of the committee. This update is for the bulk chemical storage condition assessment phase 1, which as a project incorporates the assessment of the tanks at the Torrance Refinery water recycling plant and some portion of the tanks at the Edward C. Little water recycling facility. The tank condition assessment at Torrance has been completed. The results for the assessment were presented to the committee in January of this year. Currently, staff is finalizing the assessment for the tanks at the Edward C. Little facility, which is the major update presented today. In terms of the schedule, the project is on schedule. This effort started back in July 2025 when we had the kickoff meeting for both facilities. And since that moment, it was decided that the Torrance facility took priority. based on the negotiations that we had with the refineries back then. But there were some efforts that took place for the tanks at ECL. However, we resumed that effort in January of this year. And as overall, the anticipation completion of the project for both facilities it's at the end of this month on April. The condition assessment cost for the assessment at Torrance, it's for the contractual amount of $109,657. What has been spent today based on those numbers as of February of this year was $16,604. That has not included the inspections that were conducted for the ECL. As of now, we are looking at about like $81,000. So that to say we are still within budget. Next slide, please. So as part of this phase one assessment at ECL, 11 tanks were inspected. The location of the tanks are at the north side near the top gulf, as you can see in the image on the upper right hand of the slide. There are 2 tanks that are for the sodium hypochlorite storage that were inspected, and 9 tanks for ferric chloride. Inspections were conducted in 2 rounds within the time frame between January and February. The photos in the lower right hand were some pictures that were taken during the inspections. A draft technical report has been submitted and is currently under review by staff. A final report is expected by the end of this month in April. And once the project is finalized, the staff will share the results with the committee. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
No questions.
Director Gray, any questions? Okay.
Next slide.
Okay, good afternoon, directors. I'll be giving an update on the DCS replacement project. Just going back onto the previous slide. The title page here, I put in here the MOSAIC acronym. You've heard it a few times. It's something that we've been working with the policy team on. We came up with an acronym to look at federal funding. I know that there's been some good news in that lately that we shared last month, but I just thought I'd tie those 2 together now so that we know going forward, DCS replacement project is also called MOSAIC. Sorry, next slide. So with the DCS replacement project, we're currently on schedule. We had our kickoff for the pre-construction phase in June of last year, and we're still anticipating the guaranteed maximum price proposal in September. So that's still on schedule. In terms of RFIs and submittals, we don't have too many RFIs so far, but we are getting quite a lot of submittals, about 3 to 5 a month. So there's a lot of work reviewing those submittals, turning them around, getting them back to the contractor. We're progressing through those very well at the minute. We've done 32, processed 32 of the 35 that we received to date. In terms of pre-construction costs, the contract amount is 2.1 million, and we're currently at just under 1.1 to end of February. And that is on budget. We're still tracking on budget for this phase of the project. Estimated construction costs, the original estimate from West Basin staff was $8 to $12 million for the construction phase of this project. We received a Class 5 estimate back in September of last year. We presented the board in October, and that was 14.7 million. And then we received an updated Class 4 estimate in February of this year of 17.5. Now, the jump there is actually, we asked the contractor to include 5 years of full support for the system once it's installed. So that's full 24/7 support, call-out support, and so on, and including like software licensing for the full 5 years. So the actual construction cost didn't increase from those 2 estimates, but we added on additional costs to the estimate at our request. We will be receiving the Class 2 estimate. We'll be receiving the Class 3 estimate, in June. So we'll bring that back to the board then. We hope to see it around the same level as the Class 4. Next slide, please. This slide just summarizes the work we've done since the last time we presented. The tasks there in the second column and submittals. Last column there. In terms of the tasks, you see we're doing a bunch of workshops currently. So last October, heading into winter last year, we finished the loop checks. We started going through the current condition assessments, so functional control narratives for the current system, and then selecting that final system that we're going to be installing. We ended up selecting the Aviva system platform control system, presented that to the board in January. And then in the last couple of months, February and March, we've been doing workshops every week. So we're doing 2 to 3, 4-hour workshops every week to develop things like control panel design, but also things like alarm management. So going through how we're going to manage alarms in the new system, you know, who's going to get called out at the middle of the night if something goes wrong at the plant? How's that going to work? Does it get escalated to a certain person? Is it a phone call, text, email, all three? So there's a lot of alarm management stuff we're going through over the last month. And then tagging standards. So that's very important for bringing, you know, the field tagging into the control system to make sure they match up, and going through all of the old iterations of design over the last 3 decades. Next slide, please. This is some examples of some cabinets we have out there. So these are 3 types of cabinets. We do have in total, we have 21 different cabinets that we'll be replacing, ripping out, replacing. So these are 3 main types there. You've got on the left, what we're calling a hardwired I/O cabinet. So there's a lot of hardwired connections on the back of that panel into the lower half of that control panel there. And then the actual Ovation controllers are the 2 rectangular blocks that you see in the sort of top third of the image. The middle picture there is a much more simplified setup. That's at our Chevron nitrified treatment plant. And that's going to be a relatively simple panel to replace. There isn't too much I/O there. And on the right, we have a remote I/O cabinet that's a specialist Ovation system, but we're going to be pulling all of that out, replacing it. But effectively, each wire in there will need to be determinated and re-terminated into a new controller. So those are 3 examples, but we have 21 total across all of our sites that we'll be replacing in this project. Next slide, please. And then this is the schedule, the design schedule, pre-construction. So currently in April there, we're developing those standards and governance documents that I mentioned. There's a lot of workshops there. And we've just started the system design. So we're looking at those control panels we saw in the last image and establishing how exactly are we going to replace these? How are we going to pull out the old system, put in the new system? What does the cutover process look like? Those are the decisions we're making right now. As I mentioned, we'll be getting the class 3 construction estimate in June. So we bring that back to the board. And then I've got written there October 2026. We do still anticipate the GMP being received in September. But given the process for adding things to the agenda and getting it before the board, we anticipate bringing it to the actual board in October. And that is the last slide. Happy to take any questions.
I don't have any questions at this time. Director Deere, do you have any questions? Is Director Gray still on the line? Director Gray, do you have any questions? Move on to our next item. I don't have a sheet in front of me. EJ.
Director Provide, are we done with the complete report? Everything?
No, we have.
Okay.
Oh, you still got one more? Okay.
Director Favai, there's 2 more projects to be discussed. Kevin Colin will discuss the next 2. I think actually there might be
3 to 4. We'll be making.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I'll just briefly highlight our Hyperion secondary effluent enforcement R&R project. This is a project that is really just getting started. We've internally drafted a task order solicitation and are looking to issue that to our on-call engineering firms shortly, hoping to have a kickoff in May and wrap up the condition assessment phase by the end of this calendar year. Next slide, please. A little bit of background on the project itself. The secondary effluent force main is the pipeline that conveys our secondary effluent from Hyperion to the Edwards Little facility. It's a 60-inch pipeline that has a T-lock PVC liner. It's a concrete pressurized pipe. It has a total length of about 15,000 linear feet. From Hyperion to ECL, there's about 135 feet in elevation change and quite the amount of peaks and valleys through the city of El Segundo. So there's a fair amount of airbags and blow-offs along the alignment. It was first constructed in 1994, and in 2018, as part of the Hyperion Pump Station construction, we did take the opportunity during the tie-in and the 9-day recycled water system shutdown. We took advantage of that opportunity to put in a ROV camera, which had a CCTV camera, to inspect about 1,800 linear feet. So you can see the profile of the pipeline there, and the section in red is the part that we got to capture some footage of. So it was a limited inspection, about 12% of the pipeline, and it did identify some damage to the liner, which I have a couple of photos of in the next slide, but some bulging in between the two lock pieces, a couple dents, and some minor delamination. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side, you can see some of the photos of the areas of concern we just highlighted. So what we're proposing for the next steps is a desktop analysis, a review of the environmental conditions, the baseline design, as well as based on the report that came out of our inspection in 2018, there was recommendation using some newer technologies to perform non-destructive analysis of camera inspections and leak detection devices that can be inserted into the pipeline while in service through airbags. So we're proposing to our on-call design firms that they execute this condition assessment and do that investigation while the pipeline is in service. And then based on those findings, we'll look to develop a design and perform any necessary repairs if there are any that are necessary. Next slide, please. I'll pause here if there's any questions on that project. All right, I'll highlight our JMM site improvements project. This is a multi-year project, but in the short term, we're looking to make some improvements on site. First up is some painting of fiberglass reinforced bulk chemical storage tanks, as well as some stormwater piping modifications due to a recent ordinance from the LA County Sanitation District. Next slide, please. Here's some pictures of those tanks. We have 2 sodium hydroxide tanks. They're about 20 feet tall with a 14-foot diameter, as well as 1 citric acid bulk tank, about 12 feet tall with a 6-foot diameter. So we'll do an informal solicitation, try and get 3 quotes from contractors. Based on some preliminary quotes, I think it'll be under the public works threshold of $35,000. So we'll get those 3 quotes and move forward with that in the coming months. Next slide, please. In terms of the piping modifications, to meet the requirements of the ordinance from LA County Sanitation District, in recent years, there's been increased stormwater intrusion into the sewer system. So LACSD has revised its wastewater ordinance as an effort to prevent overflow incidents in the sewer system. So we're looking at some piping modifications to divert stormwater that is collected within our chemical containment areas to the on-site detention basin. Typically, these would go to our waste dump and out our waste tank into the sewer. This new ordinance requires that stormwater be retained on-site for the period of a storm event and the 24-hour period following the end of that stormwater event. So to work with the ordinance, we're proposing redirecting these flows to our detention basin. And next slide, please. That wraps up that project.
I have a question for you on the waste discharge to the sanitary sewer. How many locations do you have? DMM, where you're connected to the sanitary sewer that's exposed to rainfall?
I think particularly the areas of concern are the chemical containment areas. So they have their own sumps that discharge to a waste sump, which then goes to our waste tank and out to sewer.
So the chemical containment areas, but they discharge to the sanitary sewer?
Correct. Through sumps, they go to a waste sump, where a lot of the on-site waste is collected, which then goes to our waste tank and is released to the sewer through, a set discharge rate as an industrial waste district.
So
Kevin, I should mention that Uzi Daniels in the back, our compliance, our operations manager.
she's in the back there nodding her head. I see that. All right, so on this one, it's 24-hour holding time. Are you guys gonna go in and you're gonna retrofit it with a rain gauge and everything so that you have the automatic shut on? Or,
I think I can. Each sump on site is individually controlled, they're manually operated, so in order for the operator to send it to sewer or the proposed detention pond, they have to manually turn on the sump pumps. So we're proposing a connection to the pipeline that would go to the waste sump to be rerouted to the detention basin. So they will still be controlled in the same manner, they'll be individually operated.
so you're not gonna make any modifications?
Just to the piping itself so that we can redirect flows from going to the waste sump to now the detention basin.
Right now, you don't have a valve that allows you to flip it? Just retrofit the valve, but no automatic controls where you're gonna have to retrofit the rain gauge and
We're not proposing any changes to the control, so the operator will still initiate.
so have you submitted your, I forget what it's called, but anyways, the identification of all these things to LSAN? And they signed off? Go ahead.
No, great job. It handled the configuration. We had to submit within a deadline a stormwater plan. We had to identify what we were going to do to prevent that. They've actually come out a couple times to the facility. And the plan is just, they basically notify you, you have till September 1st of 2026. That's when they'll come back. They look at the plan. They don't necessarily approve it. They just let you know if they have a problem with it. If we have any changes we're going to make, we just resubmit it, as long as we're meeting that deadline by September. And we did meet with them. They suggested things like covering canopies, like we really asked for their feedback.
Mhm.
And I think some of you may already be aware, it's been a real challenge for a lot of businesses and agencies because you're trying to balance the industrial stormwater permits that used to encourage you to put first flush into the sewer. So it's a real great example of two environmental regs that really have good intentions, but can sometimes butt heads.
So all we're gonna be doing is installing valves.
Correct, yeah, 2 ball valves and a Camelot connection so we can send a hose over to the detention basin.
Original, like I think original plan, there was some compliance team had submitted was including canopies, so it was maybe a different effort. But to meet the deadline in September, like staff has looked at options that will help meet the deadlines and perhaps if
I just want to confirm, because a lot of people are doing this right now, that LA County Sand is good with just manually closing the valve so that it will not go to the sand sewer, but will go to whatever detention basin you got.
They are, what they ask or may check on is that we in our SOPs or operating or maintenance, that we can document that our operators are aware they're supposed to do that. We are working with the team on just confirming with a number of people, including colleagues, that this detention basin doesn't contradict the industrial stormwater. LA County Sand is okay with us doing this, but we want to make sure with that. And then we'll be making that small change in the compliance.
Sorry for the interruption, but
Oh, okay.
one more. Orlando.
You're at the end of the table, directors. Good afternoon. I'm just gonna give a
it's
quick
working.
update on the DOD elevator modernization project, really quick here. We received pre-approval from the city of Carson, February of last week for the plans and specs. We did receive 100% draft submittal from our consultant February also this year. And we plan to issue solicitation for construction services May, June, and award in July. And to spend the date on design services, we have spent $148,593. Next slide, please. So again, just mentioned that we did receive, you'll see there the cover sheet, but we did receive draft design drawing specifications. Those drawings have been approved by the city. We did submit to the building department at the city of Carson, being that we are at the city of Carson. And we have pre-approved, so that permit will be approved once we onboard a contractor and so forth. So That'll be done at a later date, and we did not need the Department of Industrial Relations to do a plan check since this is just a modernization. So the project is excluded from it. And just to reiterate, some of the work that has already been done prior to this, the hydraulic jacks have been replaced. That was part of this project, but it was as an emergency maintenance project, so that's been completed. So this is everything else. Next slide, please. So just wanted to really briefly, next steps here. We will review the 100% submittal drawing specs and front-end documents. That's our next step before we put this out bid. Our goal is to issue the solicitation for construction services on an open gov in about May, June timeframe. And we will hopefully come back to recommend an award for construction services in about July timeframe. And at that point, once we onboard the contractor, we will go to the city and pull the permit. Is good for 12 months. So we have time to pull that permit. And we anticipate construction of the modernization to begin around August, September timeframe of the year. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Has the city of Carson been good to work with?
Yeah, they have been actually. They gave us some comments, some feedback, but it was just one round. So they're pretty good, pretty communicative, and our consultant dealt with them directly and really no issues.
Director Gray, do you have any questions on that one?
I don't think she's-
I don't have any questions. I do have a comment. We spent some money, I don't know how much we spent, 150,000 or whatever it was, to get the elevators working properly, the hydraulic jack, or the hydraulics were all taken care of. I don't understand why we need to spend $900,000 more to upgrade the elevators when they're working properly. I mean, we can replace the entire elevator, but there is no necessity to do any of that. The elevators are fine. The issue that was causing a problem has been resolved. Why are we, I don't understand, and I don't want to and won't support spending $900,000 to modernize the elevators when the elevators are working just fine. And we just spent money to make sure that they are working fine.
Yes.
So just a comment, no response necessary. Thank you.
I do recognize that it's not necessary, but I do think it's important that I do respond in the only sense that this was the direction of the board of directors.
I think the board at the time thought that this was unnecessary, but I think once you made the quote, emergency repairs, because it needed to be taken care of right away, that the elevators are working just fine. So at this point, we're done. We spent the money that needed to be spent. And this project isn't necessary. And it's almost $1 million that we're spending that can be used for a lot of other things.
Understood.
It's my comment. Okay. With that, I think we're done with all of the updates and presentations, so we are ready to adjourn.
Thank you very much.
Comments? No comments? Comments? All right, meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.